The Parable of the Seine. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, verses 47 through 50. Still more like the kingdom of heaven is like a seine cast into the sea and caught fish of every kind, which, when it was full, was drawn ashore, and when it sat down, the good ones were gathered into vessels, but the bad ones were thrown away. So shall it be at the end of the age. Angels shall come forth, and shall separate the wicked from among the righteous, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Explanation of the parable. The parable of the Seine is one of the key images of the gospel, which explains the principles of the final judgment of God and the division of people according to their spiritual nature. The Seine symbolizes the preaching of the gospel and the kingdom of God, which includes all people without exception, just as fishermen catch different fish indiscriminately. The sea is an image of the world in which people live. Just as there are different creatures in the sea, so there are different people in the world, good and evil, righteous and sinful. The division of the fish points to the last judgment, when God will determine each person according to his deeds and the state of his heart. The virtuous will be gathered into vessels, a symbol of salvation, and the wicked will be thrown out, destroyed or condemned. The angels are the executors of God's judgment, who, like fishermen, separate one thing from another. The basic idea of this parable is the inevitability of separation at the final moment of history. As long as the seine is in the water, the fish are together, but there comes a time when selection takes place. In the same way, in life, a person may be among many people, but in the end will be judged individually. Life application. The parable of the Seine can be applied to everyday life in a variety of ways. Let's look at 5 specific examples to help realize how this parable works in practice. Choosing one's environment. A person is surrounded by many people, colleagues, friends, acquaintances. Among them there are benevolent, honest and sincere, and there are those who bring negativity into life. Like a fish in a seine, a person can find himself in any company. But over time there is a natural selection. Kind and decent people stay around and negative personalities leave. This teaches to consciously approach the choice of environment, because it is on him depends on the spiritual and emotional state. Professional growth and work. In any organization, employees can be conscientious or irresponsible. Management, like fishermen, observes and eventually makes a selection. Hardworking and honest employees get promoted and recognized, while the lazy and unscrupulous are eventually fired. This is a clear reminder of the importance of diligence and honesty in life. Personal character and inner peace. The parable teaches a person to develop virtues in himself. Every day people perform actions, make decisions and shape their personalities. A person who regularly engages in self-development, reflects on his actions and strives for spiritual growth, becomes a good fish. Those who indulge in their weaknesses and sins risk being among those who will be thrown out. Trials and difficulties of life. Often difficult circumstances help a person to realize what he really is. Trials are a kind of selection that reveals who is resilient and determined, and who fails in the face of difficulties. For example, a person may face financial difficulties, job loss or betrayal of loved ones. However, it is these moments that test one's strength and show whether one is able to remain true to one's principles. Spiritual life and faith. The parable also reminds us to keep an eye on our spiritual condition. Like a fish in a net, each person lives among many other people, but it is important not to get lost among the crowd, but to follow one's own path. Regular prayers, good deeds, and caring for one's neighbors help one to strengthen one's faith and move in the right direction so that eventually one will be among those whom God will keep in the vessel. Contemporary examples. The principles outlined in the parable are reflected in modern life. Let's look at 5 real-life examples that illustrate how this biblical principle works. Filtering information on the internet. In the era of digital technology, people receive a huge amount of information. However, not all of it is useful or truthful. Just as there are different fish in the net, people encounter both quality knowledge and fake news, manipulation and propaganda. It is up to each individual to decide which information to leave in the vessel, and which to discard so as not to be deceived. Social media and environmental influences. People in social networks subscribe to different bloggers, publishers and groups. Over time, the user realizes which sources of information carry value and which only clog the mind. A natural selection process occurs. People unsubscribe from useless content and keep only those that are useful to them. This process is similar to sorting fish in the parable. Selecting job candidates. While hiring, the employer conducts a strict selection process for candidates. People with high qualifications, honesty and good references are screened out and given a position. And those who do not fit the requirements are discarded. This is a reminder that in today's world, professionalism and personal qualities play a key role. Examinations and competitions. In educational institutions, pupils and students take exams, competitions and tests. Those who show diligence and labor receive high marks and awards, while the lazy and irresponsible are left behind. This process is similar to the principle of the parable. Over time, the good is separated from the bad. Politics and governance. There is also a natural selection of leaders in society. Politicians who care about the people and make wise decisions retain the trust of the people. And those who act dishonestly and corruptly eventually lose support and disappear from the political arena. This is a clear manifestation of the principle stated in the Parable of the Seine. Psychological parsing. From a psychological perspective, the parable touches on several important aspects. Fear of inevitable selection. Many people fear evaluation, whether at work, in their personal lives, or even in front of themselves. This fear stems from a deep-seated desire to be accepted and recognized. However, realizing that ultimately every action has consequences helps a person gain the intrinsic motivation to evolve and become a better person. Responsibility for one's own life. Man often shifts responsibility for his destiny to external circumstances or other people. The Parable of the Seine reminds, no one can be justified by chance or the influence of the environment. Everyone is personally responsible for his actions and decisions. Self-reflection and mindfulness. It is important to periodically evaluate your actions and beliefs to avoid becoming a bad fish. Taking an honest look at yourself helps you understand what direction to take. People who regularly analyze their actions and thoughts are more aware of their place in life and can guide themselves toward positive change. Society as a filter. People entering different social environments inevitably undergo selection and find themselves in the circle to which they correspond in terms of values. If a person surrounds himself with honest, hardworking and kind people, he himself will strive for the same qualities. On the contrary, if the environment is inclined to laziness, aggression and envy, it can pull him down. Therefore, it is important to choose one's environment consciously. Acceptance of change. Change is inevitable in life and it can be painful. The parable teaches that separation is a natural process, as is purification. Sometimes we have to say goodbye to people who are no longer useful in life, change jobs, habits, and ways of thinking. All these changes eventually help a person move forward and become a better person. Conclusion. The Parable of the Seine is a powerful image that reminds us of the ultimate evaluation of human actions. It teaches awareness, honesty, virtue, and responsibility for one's choices. Like the sea, there are people of all kinds in the world, but a moment of truth awaits everyone at the end. The parable prompts us to ponder, what will be the catch of our lives? Will we be among those preserved in the vessel, or will we find ourselves discarded? This parable is relevant at all times, because it reflects the universal principles of life. It reminds us that human life is filled with many choices that ultimately determine one's destiny. Sometimes these choices seem insignificant, but they add up to the big picture. The parable also teaches us not to be afraid of change and to accept it as part of the natural order of things. Sometimes a person can feel thrown ashore, without hope or understanding of where to go next. However, it is moments like these that give us a chance to re-examine our lives, find new values, and find the true meaning of our existence. In addition, the parable calls for honesty with oneself. Often people try to justify their weaknesses, to look for external reasons for their failures. But the parable makes it clear, in the end, everyone will be judged by his or her actions. This is not a threat, but a call for awareness and honesty to oneself and others. Thus, reflecting on the Parable of the Seine, we can come to the conclusion that it is not only about the final judgment, but also about everyday life. It teaches meaningful choice, right actions, searching for one's true path and understanding that every person shapes his or her own destiny on a daily basis. And the main thing is that everyone has a chance to change so that at the end of the road to be among those whom God will keep in the vessel of goodness. Dear listeners, thank you for the time spent together. Subscribe to the channel, put likes and write how you like this story. Click on the bell not to miss new videos and see you soon.